So I want to talk defensive line. We have talked so much defensive line from this group and what we've seen on the practice field through 3 weeks. And for good reason. They have done a phenomenal job. It looks great out there. But I also want to just send it back a little bit and talk about defensive line in this program over the golden era of LSU football, which is what we're in. We talked to Scott Rabelais about that on Friday. And it really started under Nick Saban with just an assembly line of defensive linemen that were All-Americans, all-conference players, first, second, third-round picks, and longtime NFL guys. It was Marcus Spears and Chad Lavallee, Kyle Williams, Marquise Hill, Glenn Dorsey, Tyson Jackson, Al Woods, Drake Nevis, Sam Montgomery, Benny Logan, Michael Brockers, Kiki Mingo. Like, this is what made LSU great, is just consistently pumping defensive linemen into the NFL draft. What if I told you that LSU, since 2015, has produced one first or second round pick on the defensive line? One. In 10 drafts. Mason Smith. That's it. And while Mason Smith has made his mark on the NFL and has certainly garnered some paychecks, his production at LSU, partly due to a season-ending injury in the opening game of the 2022 season, was minimal. So you just haven't had the dudes, period. And it has absolutely shown up. Last year, if I were to sit here and go, okay, what do you think about LSU's defense last year in the running game? You'd probably go, oh, it was better. That's probably like your first instinct, because in 2023, they couldn't do anything. So anything they did this past year was going to be a step up. But here's the facts. Last year, LSU was 12th in the SEC in rushing yards allowed per game. They were 13th in the SEC in yards per carry allowed. And they were dead last in touchdowns allowed on the ground. They gave up 26. That was worst in the SEC. And you know what makes that statistic even worse? Even more of a black eye? No team in the conference faced fewer rushing attempts than LSU last year. Think about that. No one on defense lined up and faced fewer rushing attempts in the SEC, and no one gave up more rushing touchdowns. That's bad. It's bad. 12th in the SEC in rushing yards allowed per game is bad. 13th in the SEC in rushing yards per carry allowed is bad. LSU's running defense was bad. Was it better than 2023? Yes, it was. Did they take steps in the right direction? Yes, they did. Did Jacoby and Guillory miss the entire season after Mason Smith and Mekhi Wingo left for the NFL draft a year early? All that happened. Did you have to force Gio Paez and Paris Shand inside because you didn't really have anybody else? Yep. Did you have to start Ahmad Bro as a freshman? Did Dominic McKinley get hurt? Yeah, that happened too. There were lots of things that happened. But the end result of all these things that happened was LSU's rushing defense stunk. And it has to get better. When you look at the college football playoff field from last year, which is where LSU's trying to go this year, 6 of the top 13 run defenses in the country made the CFP. That's half the playoff field was in the top 13 run defenses in the country. If you look at the final 8 teams that were left, their average run defense ranking in the country was 24th. LSU's was 51st last year. That's not good enough. Texas A&M and Alabama essentially ran LSU's season off a cliff last year around Halloween. In those 2 games, those 2 programs ran for 553 yards on 6 yards per carry and 11 rushing touchdowns in 2 games. 11. So when it came to the most crucial point in your schedule, you could not stop the ground game. It's got to get better. And I think it will. But that's a huge, huge step up that's got to happen from this group. And I would suggest that group on the interior of the defensive line needs to help in the pass rush as well. And Blake Baker said this yesterday in his press availability. He said, when you look at rushing the passer, the front four, the biggest difference this camp to last year, we're getting some pressure from the inside. Last year, we were one of the best teams in the country in terms of pressuring the quarterback, but it's all got to work together, the front and the coverage, but also the front four. The ends were right there. He's saying the ends were crashing down, but if we could have gotten a little bit more push inside, the quarterback goes down. So the ends, Swenson and Jones, sometimes early in the season, Perkins, like, we're getting there, but there's no push on the inside, so the quarterback can step up and get away. Bernard Gooden's got to change that. Ahmad Bro's got to be a year better. Dominic McKinley's got to be a year better. They've got to help push the pocket and create those sacks. Last year, Gio Paez, Ahmad Bro, and Paris Shand combined for 3 total sacks. 3. You have to get more than that. It's hard to rush the passer from the interior. It is. And you don't have to have, your leader in sacks isn't going to come from there. You don't have Aaron Donald on your team. You don't have Ndamukong Suh on your team. But you've got to have more production than that. And that's a huge, huge deal for this LSU defense. I think Blake Baker is speaking from a position of confidence, and I believe it's because he knows that he's got a team much more prepared to be much better than they were last year. You add Jack Pyburn, you add Jamari Butler, you add Patrick Payton, you add Bernard Gooden, you bring Guillory back, and then at linebacker, you got West healthy, you got Keys a year older, Perkins is where he's supposed to be, he's on the field. It's got to be a lot better. And I think that it will be, but I think it took me aback a little bit looking at the statistics last year, because I was probably like you, and I'm projecting, you may have disagreed with this completely, I'm projecting on you, the listener, suggesting that your thoughts align with mine, but I think reasonable LSU minds, when asked about last year's defense, would go, well, they got a little bit better. Like, yeah, the quarterbacks ran all over them in a 2-week span. They couldn't stop Reed, couldn't stop Milroe, but, like, they got better. But you don't realize, or I didn't at least, that it was better, but it was only incrementally better. You are not going to be a championship caliber football team unless your run defense gets inside the top 40. You are not going to be a team that can close games unless your interior pass rush can be more productive than that. You can't count on Peyton and Pyburn and Relaford and Butler to do everything on the edges. Can't count on Perkins to do everything. The middle of the defense has to help some. And they just didn't really last year. So you bring in another defensive tackles coach. You give Kevin Peakles another year to mold a different crop. And I would suggest this should get a lot better, but it has to. Because I don't know that I would have characterized LSU's defense last year as bad against the run. It was bad against the run. It was bad. Like, I could have told you about the Sellers run and the Rocket Sanders run in Columbia. I could have told you about Guggenheim running for Nicholls State. I could have told you about Milroe. I could have told you about Reed. But it was really the whole year. And when they were at their best, they were getting pressure. They got pressure on Sellers, sacked him 5 times. Got pressure on Jackson Dart, sacked him 6 times. That's when they were at their best. They've got to get to that level more consistently with this group. If you'd like to read my column on that, all of it is there at louisianasports.net. As always, for free, my practice report is up on the top page right now, as well as out of practice. Hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.